Welcome to Access Academy, where today we shift our attention specifically to serving a child's most important and knowledgeable educator, that being of the family. For the next 60 minutes, we're going to highlight what you need to know about the Braille learning device called Polly. It's that time of year when schools are starting to close down for the summer and activities might be sent home, which means you might be given an opportunity to have a Polly placed in your home if it's not already. So we welcome you to this learning hour of Play Learn Braille, a family's guide to Polly. And our presenters have been on standby and they are ready to begin.
So, hello everyone. Apologies in advance for my voice. I've been sick, but hopefully it holds. So welcome to the webinar. So to introduce myself, my name is Sarah Welch, and I'm a product manager here at APH. And I'm very grateful to be joined by Jennifer Wenzel, who has filled in last minute to help me not talk as much to preserve my voice. So thank you, Jennifer. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jennifer Wenzel. I'm a technology product specialist here at APH, and I'm happy to be here as the voice of Sarah, or the other half of the voice of Sarah, and to be talking to all of you about Polly.
So thank you for joining us today.
And I think that we're going to go to a poll. Oh, I just saw, hi, Tricia. I know some of the people that are on this webinar. Thank you.
So to read out the poll.
You want me to read it?
Oh, yes, if you want to, Jennifer.
Sure. So what is your level of familiarity with Polly? And the answers are, I have never used Polly. Oh no, sorry. The Zoom poll launch just made me lose my focus. So hold on.
So that was number one, I've never used Polly. Number two, I have a family member that uses Polly. Number three.
Now I'm on track. I have used Polly myself. And number four, I have used Polly, but I do not know much about it. And five, I am not sure. So please answer that.
Now, I know that usually we have lots of, we love to give our opinions about different things and answer questions. So we would love for you to put in, again, just about your familiarity. This also gives our presenters a little bit more context of who they're talking to, just a little bit more information. And so I will go ahead and get ready to end it. And I'll share with you. And so Jennifer and Sarah, we have, looks like 20 of our attendees today have said that they have never used Polly. A few have a family member that uses it. So there is kind of a smattering of a few things, but most, I may have, and you know what? My brain might have got ahead of me. Most have said that they have not used the Polly.
Which makes it even better that you're here with us today to learn more.
That's right. By the end of our presentation, you'll know more about Polly.
So speaking of questions, please, if you have any questions, put them in the chat as they come to you. We'll try to answer them as time allows throughout the presentation. We'll have some additional time at the end to answer those we didn't get to. So please let us know what your questions are. So speaking of learning about Polly, do you want to tell us more about Polly, Jennifer?
Well,
the learning objectives.
Yeah. So number one is describe the key features of the Polly device and its role in teaching Braille through games, music, and interactive lessons. Number two is recognize how Polly fits into a broader Braille education plan, including the importance of working with a Braille instructor for skill development, like tracking. Number three is demonstrate how to use Polly's guest mode and how to navigate between user accounts using the Helios platform. And the next one is develop a home-based routine for using Polly that incorporates independent practice and family engagement to support Braille literacy.
So thank you for that, Jennifer. I got ahead of myself. So before we talk about Polly the device, let's talk about who is Polly the person. So what was the device named after, or who was the device named after? So Polly Thompson is who the device is named after. And she came to work for the Sullivan Keller household in 1914 as a secretary. Through that, she became a constant companion to both Anne Sullivan Macy and Helen Keller. Upon Sullivan's death in 1936, Polly became Keller's primary companion, and she served as the primary companion from that point until her own death in 1957. And Polly was originally from Scotland, fun fact. And on our slide, we have a picture of Polly with Helen Keller, and they're both kind of dressed up a bit, and they're standing on the sidewalk in front of a city building. So now, Jennifer, do you want to tell us a bit about Polly?
Now I'll tell you about Polly. So now we'll get to the slide that Sarah was referencing. So Polly as a device is, it has on the very top left or on the top left as you touch it, are two jumbo Braille cells. They kind of remind me of Papa Cell. You can actually manipulate the dots for one of the games in those cells. They almost feel like kind of like little light bright pegs, except not, they're more rounded. Then next to that is a built-in speaker, and then there is a 6-cell Braille display, more of a standard Braille display. Then the Polly has a keyboard with the 6 Perkins style keys, and then below those keys are 2 round keys for backspace, which is on the left, and enter on the right. And then there is a space bar, all important space bar, and then the right and left arrows are next to the space bar, and those are important for navigating Polly's menus. And then the Polly also has a volume knob, very, very important, on the right side, because Polly can talk a lot and you might want to turn her down. It also has a headphone jack for private listening. And then on the left side, there is a port for a USB drive for updating Polly. And then you can also connect Polly to the Ethernet. So there's an Ethernet port. And of course, the all-important repeat button, and then the on-off switch. And then it just should be noted that Polly does not charge. Many people mistakenly think that Polly has a rechargeable battery. It does not. It needs to be plugged in to an electrical outlet to use Polly.
So thank you for that brief overview. We did have one question I want to address quickly in the chat because other people might have this issue as well. Someone was asking, they're having trouble connecting to the internet. My recommendation for that would be to call our customer service. And I put their information in the chat because there could be a couple of different issues that are going on there, and it'd be just probably quicker and easier to talk with them.
Absolutely.
So we move on to our next poll, poll number 2. This one says, the person that Polly is named after is best known for what? Number 1, rescuing and raising parrots. Number 2, she was a famous actress. Number 3, inventing the Braille code. Number 4, she was Helen Keller's primary companion from 1936 to 1957. Or number 5, I am not sure.
Well, we have information that's coming in with a real predominant winner of it. So I'll give you a heads up to all of you that are in our webinar room that I'm going to go ahead and close it down and share out with Jennifer and Sarah. So it shows that 94% indicated that she was Helen Keller's primary companion.
So great job, everyone.
You all get an A.
And we have a couple more polls dispersed through that.
Yes.
So moving on.
All right. So now we'll move on to the next slide. And the question at the top of this slide is one that many of you may be wondering. How do I know if Polly is a good fit for my child? So I'll give you some information that might be helpful as you're thinking about this. Polly has much of its instructions in lessons and games presented in an audio format. So for optimal use of Polly, a child needs to be able to access the audio instructions. Polly also has built-in speakers with, of course, volume adjustment and a headphone jack. Polly has buttons that take about the same amount of pressure to engage as a keyboard key. So a student will need to be able to manipulate the buttons on Polly. all lessons on Poly are presented in two formats, typing and writing. The typing section uses the buttons on Poly to interact with the lessons, and the writing section uses the stylus and digital slate to interact with the lessons. So you don't have to do both sections, and some learners who are working on their fine motor skills may find it easier to engage with the typing section rather than the writing section. Poly is designed to introduce Braille to early childhood and early elementary students. So many of her lessons and games have a sing-song, joyous energy to engage these early learners. My sons laugh when I use Poly, and they're all in their early 20s, and they just think the Poly is the most hilarious thing. But at 3 and 4 and 5, they would have loved Poly. But really, anyone learning Braille for the first time can use Poly. They just have to remember that it is designed for kids. So there is sort of a lot of singing and engagement and a lot of fun, fun, joyous energy going on.
So speaking of singing and engagement, one kind of fun fact is Polly actually has a couple of songs on it by Jack Hartman, and those are always fun to listen to. So that's part of the joyous energy of Polly. So knowing that, how can I support my child using Polly at home? So a number of different ways here, and there's 5 main ones that I will talk about. So first off, Polly is a great way to encourage exposure to Braille and to promote independent practice. And we'll get into that in just a minute, but Polly's is not a standalone Braille curriculum. So with this, families can encourage their child to use Polly for a set amount of time each day. So that could maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes, just making it part of the routine. With this, the whole family can get involved to make learning more engaging. I know one thing that we've seen at conferences, even though it's mostly adults attending those, is people get really competitive about getting high scores in games, particularly letter race. So that can be a fun challenge, who can get the highest score in the family. And also, songs such as the ones by Jack Hartman can be listened to and sung along with the whole family. And some lessons have word stories that everyone can listen to together. And these are kind of fantasy stories, but they do have some almost like a radio play elements attached with different sound effects and whatnot going on. So those can be fun as well. And we had someone in the chat say, one of their students says, Polly is in a good mood today. And I would agree with that. Polly is always in a good mood.
Polly can put you in a good mood if you're not in such a great mood sometimes.
So what about actually using Polly? Can you tell us a little bit about the guest mode?
We're going to talk about guest mode. So guest mode, when you turn on Polly for the first time, it usually will mention guest mode in the startup process. It will also mention this if a learner is not connected to your Polly. So learners are set up on Helios, which is the website. But if you don't connect a learner to Polly, you can always use it in this guest mode. So let's see. So guest mode has access to all the lessons and games on Polly, and guest mode will not track progress in the lessons or high scores in games. So that's the one caveat to remember with guest mode. It won't track the progress, and it won't save its own high score, but you as a family could write down who has the highest score or save it in some other way and use it that way. Guest mode can be a great mode to use if multiple users want to use one Polly unit without changing the attached learner account to Polly each time. And this mode does not require you to ever connect your Polly to the internet. So it can be really good for places with unreliable wireless internet, or places that have additional security on the internet, like at schools, or just places maybe you're visiting someone and you don't want to connect to their Wi-Fi with a Polly, but you still want to use the Polly, or your child still wants to use the Polly. So lots of advantages for guest mode. The one thing just to remember is that the lesson progress won't be stored.
And just as a reminder, I mean, that's the automatic mode that Polly comes with out of the box. So unless you add one to it, this is what she's going to be in. Helios, a quick side note about that, if you haven't been on Helios before, it shows for the learner on Poly that has been attached to your Poly unit. It gives information like the amount of time they've been using it, what lessons they've been completed. So that can be some really nice information, particularly for the kiddos in school for their teachers to have. But if you don't have access to Helios, then you'll be in guest mode. So speaking of learners, how do we change the learner on Poly? Because that can get perhaps a little confusing if you haven't done that before. So again, this is through our companion website called Helios. And on this website, adults can make an account, and that it's in a separate account from your learner account. So you have your account, and then that quote unquote, like the guardian's account can make multiple learner accounts that they want. However, only one of those learner accounts can be connected to Poly at a time. So part of that process, if you haven't done it before, is you would connect your Poly to your account on Helios. So say you have Poly number 1, you'd have that connected to your account. And you want to make a learner, and we'll call them blueberries. And if you want to attach your Blueberry learner account on Helios, you would select your Poly unit and then select the learner that you want on that. And then Poly actually has to restart to remember that that is the learner. And then from there on, that is the learner on that account. So if you're switching between, it does require a restart, so it can take a little bit of time. So just something to keep in mind.
Just something to keep in mind too, if you do have a learner connected, when you turn Poly on, it will welcome you back as that learner, or it will give, so say Blueberry is connected, it would say, "Hi, Blueberry, welcome back," or something like that as it comes on. So that's, and if you're using the Poly not connected to the internet, but you have a learner connected, it will store whatever is done. And then as soon as it's connected to the internet again, it will upload that, it will sync it with Helios.
And that could be, you could even leave it, off the internet for a month or longer at a time.
Correct.
And it will save it, even if you turn the device on and off multiple times throughout. It saves it locally, and then it'll upload that to the internet, to Helios, when you next connect it. So this could be an interesting way over the summer. If you have access to one, your student can use it. And when they bring it back to their school, if that's where they borrowed it from in the fall, then they can upload all that data from there. So.
And now it's time for another poll, it looks like. And it's asking if the guest mode has access to all the lessons and games. And one choice is no, it only has half the lessons. Sorry,
The first choice was no, it only has a sample of the lessons.
Sample lessons. Sorry. Zoom tries to be smarter than me, and it tries to tell me where I want to be, and then it always switches away from what I'm reading. So sorry about that. So it has a sample of the lessons. It has half the lessons. 3 is no, it has the games, but not the lessons. 4 is yes, it has all the games and lessons. And 5 is I am not sure.
Well, I think that some information coming in has slowed down, so I'm going to give you a heads up in our room. I'm going to go ahead and close it down, and I'll share out with both of you. So 86% said yes, it has all the games and lessons. A few were not sure, and a few said no.
Fantastic.
It does have all the games and lessons, so that is the correct answer.
Yes. So just as a reminder, all games and lessons are stored locally on the Poly, so you don't ever have to connect. There's currently no plans for an update to add any more lessons. So you have everything out of the box. If you do have an older Poly, like from our first shipment, it is possible that you're not on the latest up-to-date version. And if you need questions about how to do that, feel free to contact customer service, but there's also directions online of how to do that as well. So that takes us on, do I need internet access to use Poly? And that's kind of a yes and no question. There are ways to use it with the internet and ways to use it without the internet. So I'm going to be focusing on three main ways that you can use Polly without the internet, because that's a little bit unusual to how some people use it. And she still has a lot of features doing it that way. So the first way is if you never connect to the internet at all. And this is assuming that you have one that's on the latest update, which has been out for a while. And so with this one, you take Polly out of the box, you never connect her to the internet. She still has all of the gaming features unlocked. However, in guest mode, she won't track any progress. So each time you turn Polly on, it'll be like a complete refresh. It'll go back to the first part of the main menu. Side note, if you do have a learner attached to Polly, when you restart, she'll remember which lesson you're on and give you the option to start back there or to go back to the main menu. So going back to the guest mode, when you first turn on Polly, she will mention that she's searching for a Wi-Fi connection. She will tell you she doesn't find one because you've never connected one. And then she will also tell you that they're continuing in guest mode because you don't have a learner attached. And then from there, you'll be at the main menu and you can navigate wherever you want in Polly. The second way to approach this is to attach a learner to the device and have all the lessons unlocked. So for this one, you would have an account on Helios created by an adult. And on that account, you'd make a learner account. Then you would connect that learner account with your Polly, and you would make sure that that learner has all of the lessons unlocked. Sometimes it's called like a teacher account. This doesn't mean that there's like other content that's restricted on other modes. But if you have the quote student account version or the learner, what that means is they have to do it in progression. And we'll talk about that more here in a moment. So this, everything's unlocked. So kind of like guest mode, once you turn it on, you can go wherever you want, but she will remember where you left off last time. So if you're working on letter A, she'll take you back to letter A and so on. Like we said earlier, when Polly is not connected to the internet, as long as that learner is connected to Polly, she'll remember all of your progression, how much time you
I think we may
I
have
think we may have
froze.
lost her. So,
spent, what lessons you've done.
oh,
So whenever you upload all of that
Oh,
data, this way is very, oh, can you hear me now?
Sarah,
can now, you
we
froze briefly.
Jennifer,
you
if you want to take
froze
over for a
briefly.
minute, I'm going to get
Sure.
my backup hotspot on. I don't know what's going
Sure.
on.
So, let's see, we were talking about if all the lessons are unlocked, it will remember that data. And if you reload, once you are back online, you would connect again and you could load all that data, whether that's, months or weeks, and you don't ever have to load that data. It would just remember your progress. The third way is that you could connect to the internet to attach a learner and progression lock the lessons. So that would mean that you would connect the learner and you would set them up as what they call a student account. And that means that they could only do one lesson at a time. So for instance, they'd have to finish letter A before they could go on to B. They'd have to finish C, do the lessons in order. And this can be easier for students that might get overwhelmed with lots of choices. There's lots of reasons to do this. Maybe you don't want them to play certain games because maybe they're like my kids and they get really fixated on one game and that's all they want to do. And that's maybe not what you want. So you're able to, with that learner account, with that student account, lock the lessons and even lock some of the games as well. So that's another way to use it. It would keep progress. And as the student finished one lesson, they would be able to move to the next lesson and they could go back to previous lessons. It just would not unlock the future lessons until they were ready. One side note about guest mode that I just kind of thought of that I don't think we've mentioned is that if you left your Polly on and plugged in somewhere, you could do that and that would kind of keep your progress. It would kind of keep you where you were, and you could keep starting back where you were. It's not ideal maybe because you'd have to keep it in the same place and always keep it on. But if it's really important to keep progress maybe for 2 days or so or a day, you could do it that way, just in guest mode, going back to guest mode.
And adding on to that, Jennifer, can you hear me again?
Yes.
Fantastic. There might be a
Probably.
small
Oh,
delay.
yeah. Yep.
So back when I was originally testing with Polly, you mentioned leaving Polly on. I actually did some fatigue testing on it and left it on for like 3 weeks straight, and she still worked fine. Would not recommend doing that on your own device, but definitely if you need to leave
But
her
you
on
can.
overnight, it should be
Yeah.
fine.
Yep. I've left her on overnight and she's done really well. So, all right. So now we want to talk about a question that we get a lot, and we have strong feelings about this. So, we are asked sometimes if Polly is a standalone curriculum, if you just get a Polly for a kid that's learning Braille and that's all you need. And the simple answer to that is no. It is not recommended that Polly be a standalone curriculum. Polly is a way to encourage exposure to Braille as well as independent practice. But it's really important for kids to get exposure to a wide variety of Braille materials. You remember that Polly, the largest word you can have on Polly is 6 letters. You can scroll over to get a few more letters, but you're not finding, it's not like reading a line, which is so important for kids. And we encourage Braille learners to work with a Braille instructor in addition to using Polly for that reason, for exposure to more materials. Also, Braille instructors focus on skills such as tracking that are important for the learner. Tracking is how the learner moves their fingers over the Braille. And good skills in tracking can encourage faster reading speeds and reduce muscle strain from improper movement. So that's really, really important. And you're not going to get that tracking on a Polly. Braille instructors can also, can also discourage bad habits from developing, such as scrubbing. Scrubbing is moving your fingers up and down over each individual Braille cell instead of fluidly in one movement from the left to the right. And this will greatly slow reading speed and decreases reading comprehension, but it's a really common habit that kids get into. I knew a Braille instructor that would always say, scrubbing is for floors, not for Braille. And that is very, very true. You do not want to be a scrubber. It makes it harder to get like a word. You're more getting just one letter at a time, and it makes the speed a lot slower. So grabbing those bad habits early is really important from an instructor. Another Braille curriculum can help with introducing and building literacy skills also, as well as more complex Braille concepts. But Polly is a really fun way to reward, to have some independent practice, to gamify it, to make it really fun, because Braille is fun. Sometimes Braille is presented kind of, okay, now we got to do our Braille. That's not how it should be. Braille is really a fun, great thing to do, just not only on the Polly. Polly helps make it fun.
Exactly. And there are a variety of different Braille curriculums out there. Of course, at APH, we have building on patterns, and there's other ones as well. So yeah, that's kind of up to the school team what they think is best. But Polly works great with anything that's out there as a way to encourage more exposure and independent practice. So one thing we did want to touch on is there's been some miscommunication or rumors that have gone around. So this is more to clear the air. So some people have heard that some Poly units had a bad power cord, and that is true. There were some. But first we talk about the power cord. So the power cord for Poly is divided into 2 parts. So there's the larger part that has the power brick, and that's the kind of rectangle device, and it plugs into the device. The other part goes, it's smaller, and it goes from the power brick to the electric outlet. So it actually has that 3-pronged electrical plug on the end. And it's the smaller part that we had an issue with. So what happened? So our partner that we work with, because we don't construct Poly ourselves, we partner with a different company for that. They received a shipment of bad power cords back in 2023. So this is not a new thing. And again, the smaller part was the only part to be defective. So from this bad lot, the cords appeared fine visually when you looked at them at first, but they were found to become brittle with physical manipulation in a short time. And this was something as simple, if you've seen the box of Poly, you have to lightly fold the cord to get it back into the box. And even just lightly folding was enough to make the cords brittle and some of them break apart, which is really bad. So this was discovered back in December 2023, and it only affected one shipment that we had of poly units. We immediately recalled all of those cords, sent communication out to those that had an affected unit, and then sent them a new power cord that didn't have any issues, and it was fine. So how can we prevent this in the future? Because obviously we don't ever want to have to do a formal recall again, and safety is very important. So a couple of things have happened. First off, our partner that we use, they changed their vendors for the power cords. So they use completely different people now. And then on both their side and our side, we've both updated our quality control processes, because that kind of showed us a gap that we had. We were visually inspecting the power cords and testing that they power on, but we weren't doing any strength testing. So strength testing has been updated on both ends, and that includes physically manipulating the cords to bend them back and forth. That's been added to our QC process there. So Jennifer will talk about how you can check the cords just to peace of mind to make sure, do I have an affected cord or not? Because there's been some confusion around that.
There has, and as a teacher or a parent or anyone that's working with a blind or visually impaired or low vision child, you don't want a defective power cord. So just to make sure, if you want to check your cord to ensure peace of mind, the smaller part of the power cord has a series of numbers and letters printed on it, each one. And so the affected lot has a string of letters and numbers that start with E74, E like Edward, 7, and a 4. And if you find E74 on your power cord, please immediately stop using the cord and contact customer service. If you have any questions or want assistance, or if you're still not sure, just contact our customer service and they'll be very happy to talk with you about this. And they are available Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern at 1-800-223-1839. Or you can email them at any time, support@aph.org, and they'll get back to you and help you with that. But this did happen a while ago, and we hope that we've covered all of them. But you never know. And if you want to check or if you have any questions, please just contact customer service.
One thing to note with that is the numbers and letters, they're not tactile, they are printed. Yes. So we've had some people take pictures of their cord and send it in, and we can read on there what's on there. So yeah. If you have any questions, for sure, let us know. Now, we did have a question in chat, and they were asking if they have a student that's using Poly through the summer, is there a way to make a copy of their progress for IEP data needs? So probably the easiest way for this would be, like we were talking earlier, if you have the learner attached to your Poly unit that student is using. Then as the student's using it over the summer, if you don't need the data till you get back to school, when they bring the unit back and it connects to the internet, it'll update all of that. And you can see the dates that it was used. So you could just look at the data from that time and parse it down to what they did over the summer. So that'd be like the lessons they did, which days they used it, how long they spent on it, and all of that. If you need the data like in parts over the summer, if they connect to internet like in the middle of the summer, or if they're able to take it somewhere with the internet, like the library, then same thing, it'll upload from that point. If this is someone who's wanting to get the data and they don't have the admin account or the guardian account for that Poly, you would need to contact the person that does to get that data from that. But on the Poly, one thing that's interesting to note is on the games, she will remember her high score, and that's stored locally, and she'll tell you that each time if you've beaten your high score or not. But there's not really a way to to see all of that data as far as usage goes directly on Poly. You'd have to go through the Helios account. Oh, we had a great question, and I'll let you start this one, Jennifer, and then I'll add on. Is Poly deafblind accessible? And this does come very frequently. This is a question that we're asked.
This does, and it is and it isn't. So it's not directly deafblind accessible, I would say, because it does rely a lot on audio information. But if someone like a parent or a teacher or an instructor can interpret what's being spoken, then a deafblind person could definitely interact with the Poly. They just would need that help to get that audio content. I think you could, I mean, another way, if the person, although they probably don't know Braille as they're learning Poly, I was just going to say you could copy some of that into another format like Braille, but that might be difficult. So if you can somehow access those audio instructions, it definitely will work. There is some haptic vibration from the Poly, like if you get the right answer or if you get the wrong answer, especially during the games, there's some haptic feedback if it's wrong. So that's, and also some of the games, like letter race, for instance, if you get it right, that letter disappears and another one comes up in its place, so you can tell. So it's not ideally accessible, and we do get that question a lot, and we are definitely looking into other products that might be more accessible to deafblind students.
So one thing I've ran into, because it's kind of like a yes/no question, but mostly on the no, is again, most of the instructions are all audio. So you have to have some way to access that, either directly you're listening or you have someone interpreting it for you. There are some games with that haptic feedback that if they know the instructions ahead of time, they can complete them entirely and have no issue. But that
like letter
is
race is one of them that they could do.
exactly.
Once they do it once, they would know how to do it and be able to do that again.
Yeah, and just as a reminder, so Poly does have a built-in speaker you can control the sound volume on, or you can connect headphones, and that's through the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. Unfortunately, you can't connect Bluetooth headphones or speakers to her. But that is a great question, and that comes up a lot. And that kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is another question we've had is with the lessons that use the stylus. If you're not familiar with a stylus, it's kind of how you quote unquote handwrite Braille, though not everyone agrees with calling it that. But essentially, you have a small metal pointed object, and you're pressing down in a slate. So it's like the Braille cell upside down, and you're pressing, when you press down, it's making the bubble of that Braille cell, essentially. Or that dot. And so there is physical manipulation in that and fine motor skills that you have to get into each part of that slate and stylus. And so again, all lessons and the games are available either in the using that stylus, or if that's not the most accessible to your learner, you can do the typing, which is using the Perkins style keyboard, which is a lighter touch there. Also, the jumbo Braille cells that are at the top left of the Poly, there are some games where you press and manipulate them down. Some people don't want to do that, so you can just skip those games, but that is something to keep in mind as something for your student could be interesting. But fantastic question for that. We did have one question earlier I wanted to go back to. Note on, and this was from Jennifer as well, actually, different Jennifer, and they were saying that their Poly that they're using from their learner is registered with the TVI at their school, so they can't get on it at home. Is there a way to transfer the registration? That would probably end up being more of a customer service question, because you would have to disconnect the learner from that school account and then connect it to an account that you made that's just school use, not school use, the individual home use. But really the main things that you would miss on Helios, if they're already connected through their teacher, is you cannot see the length of time they spent. You don't have that data. One thing we didn't touch on is on Helios, particularly for those working with instructors, they can assign homework, so they can assign certain lessons to do. So you might have access to that. But you do have all the games and lessons that are already on Poly. Oh, we had another question. I'll let you start answering this one, Jennifer. So that Lana is asking, do I understand correctly that when you're using a stylus, the written letters will appeal on a Braille cell? And that's a great question because there's not many digital Braille slate devices out there.
Yes, and they will, in some of the games and some of the answers, they will appear on the standard Braille display on Poly, which is that 6-cell Braille display. And I do like that Poly has, and Poly, the slate is also 6 cells. So it is a nice way to introduce that slate and stylus concept to students, which isn't included in a lot of Braille learning devices. So it is kind of a fun way to do that. And you do not have to push as hard. So when you're doing, so say you're using Braille paper with a slate and stylus, that's kind of a hard push through that thick paper. It's not as hard as that for Poly. It does still need some manipulation, but it's not that really hard kind of punch through paper that you have to do when you're doing Braille paper with a slate and stylus.
And for people who are familiar with the slate and stylus, it's the same usage. So it's actually a typical stylus is what you're using. It's not a special one just for Poly. And
Correct.
it's the same format laid out. So when you're working in your cell 1, which would be the cell all the way to your right on the stylus part, it comes up in the cell 1 on your refreshable display, which would be the cell all the way to your left.
Left, yeah. So you're writing from right to left, but your text is appearing left to right. That's important to remember. It's sort of like writing in a mirror. You're kind of writing right to left with your top right dot being your dot 1, which is your letter A, instead of your top left dot. But it will appear on the cell on the display as A on the top left. If you think of it, when you're doing it on paper, you'd be writing and it would appear correctly on the reverse side of the paper, on the other side of the paper. So that's kind of what this is showing.
So you're building up those same skills if you do use a slate and stylus. It's not like special just for Poly.
Right, right. You're using just a regular standard stylus.
And they add in, you won't hurt your fingers after using a stylus, which if you press down hard, you might still get a little sore, but yeah, requires less pressure than these
and
standard.
I do, as a blind person who uses Braille daily, I will say I still find uses for the slate and stylus, especially for labeling and quick Braille notes on the go. Sometimes I generally have one in my backpack, sometimes in my purse if I have a big enough purse. So it is still a really good skill. I equate it to sort of that pencil and paper Braille. So, but that's just me. So I think we have one last poll. Is that correct?
Oh, yeah,
we
actually
do
stopped
have
sharing.
one. I'll go ahead and post it, and it'll be screen shared here if that's okay. You all were talking, and I thought that it would be nice if the viewers saw you more up close. So I will launch this here for you. Do you see it on your end, Sarah?
It popped up for me and then it closed for me. I can read it out if other people are seeing it.
Yeah, hopefully you can all see it. It shows that it's supposed to be sharing. We'll see. What is the combination of numbers and letters that is found on the detective power cords? Is it, but no one is putting anything. It disappeared as well. Well,
Disappeared for
let me relaunch. Hold on. Let's see. Hold. I think I
There
got
we
it.
go.
Oh, now I think
Yay.
it's up there.
There you go.
It popped up in Braille on my Braille display.
So to read out again, the question is, what is the combination of numbers and letters that is found on the defective power cords? So your first option is F35. Your second option is E40. Your third option is E74. Your fourth option is F77. And your fifth option is, I'm not sure.
Is totally a fair option.
I will go ahead and just kind of end this out and share. So 93% indicated E74. One person wasn't sure, and one person said E35, F35. I said that wrong. Too many E's and F's.
So just to remind once again, because there has been confusion over this kind of word of mouth, I imagine, the affected power cords were ones that had the E74 on them. And if you ever have any questions, please contact customer service. But it was one shipment that we discovered in December 2023. We did have a formal recall. We recalled all of them and sent out new cords to those that are affected. But for sure, if you have any questions and want to double check, please do contact us, and we're happy to assist and put your mind at ease. And I don't think we've had any other questions in the chat, but thank you all for the questions that you have been asking, and thank you for putting up with my voice super pleasant to listen to. So
Okay, well, I will get this prepped to put this in. I am just tend to not be as quick on the trigger here. Here we go.